here Robert and I sit before some really special modules that, and actually a set of them, two of them, that potentially have never been in a two-in-one case of this kind. It's the Waveform Synthesizer Model 132.
Two of them.
Two of them. And you know, Don Buchla never liked to refer to his instruments as synthesizers. So, but interesting that he called this one the Waveform Synthesizer. But I guess that's just the process of what's going on with these things.
It's a sea of black Davies knobs.
Yeah, something we're not used to. So we're out of our territory. So, yeah, we got these from Mark and Chip at MEMS project, and we're kind of just gonna explore them. So from what I understand, they're essentially sequencers running at a super fast rate, and there's 32 knobs on the panel, and each knob represents a partial to the waveform, so kind of like a step in this within the sequencer. So as you turn the knob to the right and add these partials, the waveform it changes.
And each knob is individually numbered 1 to 30. 32, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. There isn't like a range for the potentiometers of 0 to 100 or anything like that. They're just the number of the step.
Yeah.
Which is pretty interesting.
And it's, in 100 series form, there's not, too much CV control. There's a FM input, like on most things, a input to control voltage, the frequency, and there actually is a trigger out, which is kind of interesting for an oscillator, but you kind of have to think of it too as a sequencer. So what I believe when I was talking with Mark is maybe there's a pulse that goes out on every 16 steps of this thing, but the thing runs so fast. It's blindingly fast. So I'm not really sure. We'll have to ask Mark and Chip kind of maybe what their idea is for using this high-speed trigger out of the 132 for. But it is...
It's beautiful is what it is.
Right?
I was sitting here staring at it. It's...
we've got two next to each other, so it is really a sea of black knobs.
Well, I don't know. There's something very aesthetically... we've seen this kind of layout in pictures of the system at Mills College, not just of specifically the 132, but like the other sequencers and stuff, and the 245 with these Davies knobs on it. But it just, you can look at it and just think, holy moly, man, I can control everything. Mm-hmm. There's no display, no buttons, just a switch, 2 CV inputs, or 1 CV input, 1 trigger output. I mean, it's really simple for all the crazy things that it can do.
Yeah. So we've for the video that we'll have on Patreon and then on YouTube eventually, we also have the Mordax data.
Yeah.
Kind of to represent what's going on with the all the different partials in the waveform. Thing is, actually, it's really useful to have this plugged into an oscilloscope, because in the sea of 32 knobs as you're turning, you're hearing these subtle shifts and changes, but it's also interesting to see it kind of correlated on the oscilloscope, because you can kind of with practice, I guess you could kind of figure out, but you can make janky sine waves or
some kind of basic wave folding type sounds.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it does. We'll get to the sound quickly, but it kind of sounds digital because everything's broken up in these 32 partials.
Yeah.
And they're kind of just little pulses, the way that it looks on the oscilloscope.
Like aliasing, right?
It's just kind of very stepped. I'm sure if we ran this into a filter, that would kind of be like smooth things out a bit, but it sounds oddly digital for a, analog module.
Yeah. When I was playing with this before we recorded today, I was running it into my 291E, the triple morphing filter.
Mm-hmm.
And you can, with this, you can make some really, and I was just using one of them because I didn't realize you had loaned me two. But there's some really great and complex harmonics. So, messing with the resonance in the triple morphing filter, as I'm bringing these in and out. It was one of those really cool things where I couldn't do it twice. Because I had stumbled upon it somehow and I didn't know what happened, so I wasn't able to do it again. But it sounded really amazing.
Yeah. So let's turn up one of these.
Okay, we'll do number 1.
So right now we have just number 1 knob turned all the way up, so it's just one kind of pulse going. Obviously, there's a frequency knob. And it does kind of go down to clicks.
Wow, an LFO in Buchla? Oh my gosh.
But I guess could be useful, with, I guess at this rate, maybe the trigger knob the trigger output would maybe clock something in a little bit more usable frequency.
So no LFO then is what you're...
So, yeah, we're just like, it's just kind of interesting. So we'll leave that number 1 up, so we'll then turn up, let's say, knob number 13 slowly right
now. And so I can see on the data. Yep, there it is. I saw it up here on the data, and then I started to hear it.
So
turn that all the way back down again, and I'll be quiet. There it is.
So yeah, kind of wiggling that back and forth. So subtle, but then that's only 2 knobs of this thing. So if you turn up...
What's this one?
28.
28.
That adds quite a bit. Let's go back to 5.
And I'll do 31.
And then let's do like a bank. Let's do like 11, 12, and 13.
Oh, wow. I'm watching this on the oscilloscope, and so I see how those different individual kind of square waveforms have now come together and made this, it looks like a stair step, not a stair step, but it's not quite a square, and then up there, now it's a square. That's really cool.
Yeah, so you can build your, so we could have like, that's, 10 through 13 kind of all the way up while we have these other partials scattered throughout. But you can kind of build your square waves like that, then we could maybe have the next 4 down and then build another set of 4 to...
So I'm doing that with 26, 27, and 28.
Yeah, it's just interesting how some will make... as you kind of get them all going, really the more little fine tweaks adds that much more depth to the sound.
I'm turning number 32 and listen to the harmonic difference. It's really cool. And so you're saying that behind the scenes, a really, really fast audio rate sequencer is creating these partials?
Yeah. And we're acting, it's like we're just turning up steps. So if we had the Marf running as fast as it could go, and we started inching up, a few of the steps. If we plugged into an oscilloscope, we would kind of see roughly the same.
Yeah, well, I run my Moog 960 sequencer at audio rate a lot, but I don't have 32 of them. Mm-hmm. So this is pretty wild. 32 of those would be huge, by the way. It'd be like my entire studio would be covered in...
Taking over the living room. What's also interesting is if we start to turn everything up, which I'm doing. Maybe I'll get some help from Robert as there's 32 of these
otherwise it'll be an hour long just knob turning.
It's gone because we've gone. What is this in what's this terminology? It's like we're kind of at that null point or whatever where the whole wave has kind of canceled itself. I think
Nathan Moody would know.
Yeah, hopefully Mark and Chip will correct my
we'll have to ask
idiocy.
Well, neither one of us are engineers. I mean,
but yeah. So now it's like as if it's like we have that full wave. So then you can start. What's kind of nice is you can then start taking ones down, and you have like the inverse.
So that's just one knob, number 25.
Now going down to 0.
And I can't see that number. There's 1. Wow. I mean, that's really interesting. We had them all turned up all the way, and then we turned down 3 of them, and we get this really neat sounding. It sounds like multiple oscillators, kind of, in unison with slight detuning.
Yeah, so let's kind of bring this back down, and let's switch over. Let's get the second one
mixed together. Wow.
So yeah, can I have that moving sound? So a bunch of these knobs are kind of already tweaked on this one.
If those were Rogans, I'd be able to tell. Kyle and I have this. We're like the Bloods and the Crips, or the Sharks and the Jets.
Over knobs,
Rogans and Davies.
Well, who's in the camp of the? Are these Rogans too? The
these are the 200E has Selcos.
Oh, Selcos.
Yeah.
Those guys. Can't even.
I tried to replace all my Eurorack knobs with Selcos, but
then you got bored.
But I got bored. People, man, that's what they're like. Forget the 132 and the 123. They're gonna be
all that Selco,
the Selco and Rogan and Davies, and then somebody else will say, "Well, there's also this other kind of knob, CFAM."
What's also interesting is when we, because obviously you can FM these. Let's do that.
Yeah, that's coming to that was our data connection. Yeah, okay, cool. Sweet. So you're FMing 132 on the left side 132 with the right side 132. Because we have 2 of these. And this is a good reason, by the way, to be a Patreon subscriber if you can, because you can watch the YouTube video of this. And if you're not a Patreon subscriber, which is perfectly fine, we post the video for everyone 1 month after the episode airs.
Yeah, so I've got all the knobs now off on the second 132. That's FMing the first one. So I'm just going to bring in, let's see, I'll put that a little bit. I'm upping the amount on the frequency modulation knob. It's probably about a third of the way up or so. And if I bring in 1 pulse, like I'll bring in just number 1 on the second 132. And then I'll bring in a second knob. So bring in a few. I'll change the tuning on. Turn up the
starting to get gnarly.
Next knob on, so now we're about 3/4 of the way up.
Yeah.
So that was just one partial I just turned down there that kind of then tuned into this somewhat relative frequency. I turned that one up, and now we're out of that.
Yeah. Let me crank up the audio on that for a quick second here. Now go ahead and turn that. Wow. Oh, you hear that? That little bit of gurgling sound in there?
Yeah, it sounds very digital, like...
Yeah, I mean, it sounds aliased.
Yeah.
Which makes sense.
I'll turn up a different knob.
Yeah, it's that stepping in there. And this is a 100 series module, so from the 60s. And we buy Eurorack modules today to do this kind of stuff, which is sort of mind-blowing to me. I mean, that, in a good way. This was way ahead of its time.
Yeah, and obviously there's 32 partials you have there. I think this being like an additive synthesis type of technology, a lot of software in current day have blown this out to where you can have hundreds of partials that you're dealing with and get much more complex sounds out of. And there's a module that came out recently in the last couple years. That was cool. Just turned down one of the knobs on the...
Just randomly.
module.
He was like, I'm going to reach for that knob. Oh, look, cool harmonic. Cool timbre.
Yeah, it is pretty wild too. That's what Chip and Mark kept on telling me. He's like, FM each other.
Yeah, there is a Eurorack module, right? That does...
It has like 500 and some odd...
was it the panharmonium? We'll have to look into that.
No, yeah. I was talking with Ben Wilson about it the other day. But pretty cool. But I mean, this thing was made in 1965, 66 or whatever. So, I don't know. It was pretty wild.
I think it's pretty amazing.
And it's kind of interesting. I mean, if we maybe cut out this one and turn off the FM and go down to just one of the...
Left or right? There we go.
And, it is like, as you kind of turn these things, I mean, you think 32 knobs, like it's going to be just drastic shifts, but in a way it's not, because you're controlling all these. It's oddly subtle, yet complex at the same time.
It has if you've ever used a fixed filter bank in 5U or Eurorack, where you're turning a bunch of knobs to change the harmonics in the filter bank, it has that same kind of experience. My mind, like my preconceived notion tells me that as you turn those, I would expect pitch to change. But it doesn't really. It doesn't, because you're changing the interval on the harmonics, and so it's changing the shape of the waveform, which might have a pitch variance, but it's really cool.
What is interesting too, because I mean, in a way, Don didn't keep going with this idea. There's an interview that I read of his, I don't know, one from like the 80s. I don't know if it's like Keyboard.
Yeah, it's in Keyboard Magazine. Yeah.
Where he talked about the technique of running a sequencer at high speed and using the steps or whatever to kind of make a waveform. And he just kind of was talking about how it didn't really work for him in a way. Like the harmonics weren't, I don't know, they didn't kind of poke out as much as like compared to maybe like a fixed filter bank, or he had the 148 module, which is has like the 10 different harmonics that come out of that. And so he didn't run with this. I think he, arguably he made one or two of these before kind of abandoning it. But it's still really pretty interesting.
It is. Okay, I'm excited about this part. I know I say that in every episode, but it's true. Because we've been having...
The excitement level just keeps on shooting through the roof.
Yeah, I mean, someday when we get to something like, I don't know, we're just talking about a banana cable.
Yeah, you can be like, screw this part.
I might say, but then again, there are new banana cables coming out, so that's pretty exciting too. No, but I'm really looking forward to this part of the show, because this just kind of blew my mind. Yeah,
so we got another thing that Chip and Mark sent us was the Sequential Voltage Source Model 123. Which is an 8-step sequencer, and it's pretty, and it's got 3 lanes of 8 steps, so you can have 3 different outputs going, and then individual pulses for each of the 8 steps of their output, and then it can go down to 2 steps or up to 8. So with this, we just decided to sequence both of the 132s that we have here, and kind of make chords out of it. And so, yeah, we're just going to kind of get this thing running, and then Robert and I will just jam on the knobs. He'll take over 132 and I'll take over the other, and we'll just kind of shift in knobs in and out, and then maybe end up kind of, they're also connected by frequency modulating each other, so maybe we'll devolve into some nastiness with that too.
Yeah. So right before we jump into the sound, let me just describe for people what this module looks like.
Yeah.
It's 2 panel spaces, or 2U, and it kind of reminds me of the it's hard to say. So it has, for each knob, each column of knobs, it has a nice incandescent red lamp. These look really nice. The increments, so to set the number of steps, is a big old chunky notched Davies knob.
What's amazing too on the on that portion of the number of increments is what it says. It starts at a 2, so it has number 2 notched, and then it delineates number 7.
Right.
But it doesn't go out. It doesn't say 2 and 8, but it goes up to 8. So there's another dot above the 7. So
it's because of the number of increments text on it would impede that 8.
Yeah, I guess so. I'm just thinking like, oh, Don's always trying to, it's like let's give him a 5-step sequencer in the
2 to 7. 2 is the first prime, and then it goes to 7, which is not the second prime, but still, very Don. It has 6 black CV inputs at the top. I mean, I'm sorry, those are outputs.
Yeah. So they're
see, that's what I'm so 200, right? Like black means input. Those are outputs, and then 8 red pulse outputs.
Yeah, and so interesting that, I mean, there was a point where, you'll see a lot of the dual outputs on a lot of the early modules, which, in my mind thinks like, well, it's banana, you only need one, you can just keep on stacking off of those. But for whatever reason, maybe I guess to not make as big of a banana tree stacks, that he had 2, but then I, kind of got away from that in the later series later era of the 200 series.
So there are 6 outputs, partially, I think, because of panel space, it didn't have 8. But how do the individual outputs correspond to the lanes and the columns? Do you?
It doesn't. Yeah, that's right. So up at the top it says A, B, and C in between 2 of each of these. And but the rows, I'm guessing, it's for each row.
You have 2 outputs per each row.
Yeah,
okay, that makes sense.
But it doesn't. I guess maybe on this panel, it doesn't delineate rows A, B, and C. I guess we're just putting it together.
It doesn't say A, B, and C, but top to bottom.
Yeah,
that might make sense.
Yeah,
interesting. Yeah, it's pretty cool. I really like the way this looks. All right, enough talking about UX. Let's hear this.
Yeah,
thing.
So we'll start out with each train up pulse 1, and then we'll just we'll roll with it.
I'm matching his. Here we go.
Turn up the FM a little bit.
I'm gonna make the sequence faster. Try this.
Too much fun.
Love that chord sound.
Yeah.
That just
Yeah, easy to set up with having all these knobs right in front of you and kind of
Yeah.
tweaking sounds at the same time compared to maybe trying to do it on like the 251
Right.
or yeah, kind of trying to.
it has this really neat like wavetable. Like we're working with a wavetable.
This is what
synthesizer.
kind of we're doing. Yeah.
Yeah. Instead
Drawing
of
these
selecting a
things.
wavetable from a wavetable, we're creating a wave.
Mhm.
You know, it's like we're creating our own tables that we can't store forever. But
Yeah.
and the three-step sequence all the way here.
Mhm.
There's your classic 5-step. That's great.
Yeah, we could also just show real quick maybe the we'll use the trigger out of one of the 132s to trigger. So it's going at just blindingly fast speeds, and then this is the lowest or the slowest speed, I guess, if we were to turn kind of the frequency knob all the way down.
Cool.
Which is
So we're using the pulse out from the 132 synthesizer into the pulse input on the 123 sequential voltage source, and that's the slowest that it will send a pulse out.
Yeah.
Is it respective of the shape of the knobs, or? Oh, I see that. Yeah. Cool.
yeah, there's some.
So the harmonics are changing, but the speed of it isn't because of the frequency.
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
just because of the clicks, but if I were to go some of this.
Ooh, you hear that?
So that's at 2.
Cool. Listen. Oh man, that's so neat. So we could sequence with sections A and B a chord on one 132 and then use section D for a melody on the other 132, for example.
Well,
Right.
you can. It doesn't have 2 inputs though.
Well, one input here, one input on, so, oh yeah, I see, yeah. I got it. So we're sending all 3 knobs out to, or all 3 columns.
No, just the A column.
Or just so this row, I'm pointing at the top row here. A row is going out to the left side 132,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And earlier we had C row going out to,
B row.
or B row.
going
And then
to-
if we had another 132, we could have the C row going out to.
Mhm.
I got it. Okay.
All right. We
That's
had
fun.
enough madness. Should we
Yeah.
talk to Mark and Chip about
Yeah,
this
you
and
know,
all the cool stuff? that
now I
they're
have a
doing?
lot of great questions for them. There's one more funny thing I want to point out that I just love about this. I'm turning the knob for the number of increments from all the way down to the bottom, and it's so the knob that the pointer is at 6 o'clock,
Yeah.
but the number 2 for the number of steps is at about 8 o'clock or 7 o'clock, right? And then when I turn the knob all the way up to 8, it's at like almost midnight, and the 8 pip is on 11. So it's not literal here. It's a guide, but that's
Yeah.
pretty neat. You know, and that's one of the little quirks about Buchla that I've come
Well,
to
and who knows
like.
what, because this is obviously a recreation of.
Right, yeah.
So maybe the click potentiometers back in 1965 did correlate.
Yeah. It's one of those things. Well, that was really fun. All right, let's talk to the guys.